So welcome to the council meeting at the beginning on the 6th of February 2022. This is a meeting during the pandemic, so we will be on the cameras and the technology right throughout. So everybody is used to being on there, so I don't think we need to worry about instructions. Just to open the meeting, I want to say welcome to 2022 and a particular welcome to our guests who are online who will be presenting in the public forum. We have a number of public forum guests this morning. Sarah van der Birch, welcome. Welcome to Stephen Howard. Welcome to Dot Lovell-Smith. Welcome to Robin Barraclough, and we'll be hearing from you shortly. We'll just have to go through some formal opening part of the meeting, and then we'll get on to the public deputations. So thank you for waiting. So now I'd like to invite Tumu Taiao, Yayan Cranwell to do a mihi whakatau. Thank you, Yayan.
Uia ki te raki, he tuhi raki, he tuhi raki. Uira ki te papa, he whaunuku, he whaunuku. Ka hono ki ka pau, o pau tere raki, ko tahu kumia, ko tahu whakairo. Ka tuku atu ai koe ki te poe, tiwha tiwha te po, tiwha tiwha te ao. Kere kere te po, kere kere te ao. Tako tako te po, tako tako tau, ka karo koe ki te poe, oti atu ai e, taki au e. E te raki hiroa, ripo raua te aroha mo te moto e kōrero nei e. Te moto o huikai. Te moto o tūtehurewa, hai o te mano, te mama, e te tiwhi tiwha, e te re tonu a mihi mōhau, e te ika paunamu. E te tauko a te mate, e mo te ana ta kākau, e apukura ana te waha, e rere ana hupe, e mārki ana roi mata mōhau, e te rakitira. E tā mukura, e te mātātoa haere. Haere, haere atu rā mahu e mai nei o hua tamariki roto i te au tūroa. Haere tonu ka mihi ki te kirimate, ki te whānau Ramsden i tēnei wā, ko e atu ki te rakatira, ki tua te ārai e te rakatira moi mai. Moi mai oki mai, kaori mātou e wari tia koe o tō mahi. Hei whakakāku anō a papatūnuku. E ringa raupa koe hei te tū hono i waiku i ngā hāpore nei o te pātaka o rākai hautu me te pākihi whakateke o waitaha e te rakitira e te raki hiro haere. Haere moi mai rā hoki mai. Tiraha, whakataha. Kia koutou te whānau Ramsden, kia kaha kia mai ka manawa nui i tēnei wā pauri tōnu hai a te manawa. Kaore e kupu e kōrero ana o tōna mahi. I tōna kaha, mo tō whānau nō reira, nei te mihi aroha, kia koutou nō reira te rakitira haere atu rā e te moi e. Apiti no rātou hono tātou kia tātou, apiti hono tātou, rātou kia tātou nō reira tēnā koutou katoa. Ki ngā manuhiri hara mai ki runga tēnei hui, tēnei wā, mo te Tumu Taiao ki Waitaha nau mai. Nau mai hara mai tēnei wā. Kia koutou, Sarah van der Birch, Stephen Howard, Dot Lovell-Smith mā, hara mai marunga e te kapua tēnei wā mo tēnei hui. Engari ko nui te māmai tōnu i ngā kaimahi o te Tumu Taiao ki Waitaha mo te wehe atu a te rangihiroa Peter Ramsden. Just acknowledging everyone, just acknowledging the loss of our rangatira, Peter Ramsden, and now I'll hand over to Vic Couch Lewis, who will give a kōrero about the mahi of Peter te rangihiroa Ramsden. E te mihi kia koutou katoa, mauri ora ki te whānau.
Sorry, Yvette, can I just ask you just to turn off your camera for the moment until the deputations are ready? So if you just click on the video icon on your screen and just cancel, amazing. Thanks so much. Away you go, Yvette.
Peter e te ho, e te rangatira. Kui wehe atu rā. Kia au, te moi. Kia te whanau pane, kia ani. Rātou ko mihi ata, ko mana nui. Kia kaha, kia maia, ki manawa nui, e tēnei wā pauri. Ka nui te araha, ka nui te mihi. Peter is recognised as a highly respected rangatira of Ngāi Tahu Whānui and well known and regarded across many communities of the Canterbury region. And we have been greatly saddened by his passing just prior to Waitangi Day. He was particularly noted for his work in matters conservation and the natural environment, a keeper of the flame in terms of mātauranga Māori, the maintenance, restoration, and preserving of traditional and customary practices associated with mahinga kai, and the sustainable utilisation of natural resources that underpin and have sustained whānau, hapu and iwi life for generations. Peter had a unique ability to live, work and walk in two worlds, and with the utmost integrity, he navigated the natural tensions between the two with skill, humour and humility. As an advisor, supporter, educator and broker, Peter could see where those two worlds can intersect for mutual benefit. Environment Canterbury will remain eternally grateful to have had the benefit of working directly with Peter over many years. Under Peter's guidance, Environment Canterbury has grown and developed significantly in terms of its capacity and effectiveness to engage more meaningfully with mana whenua, with wider community and stakeholder groups. The Canterbury Water Management Strategy collaborative process would certainly have been much less of an effective journey without Peter's most significant contribution. Peter's contribution on behalf of our organisation to supporting engagement across Canterbury between various Crown agencies, central government, councils, wider community, industry stakeholders and Ngāi Tahu, coupled with his strong grasp of reality and pragmatism, have allowed this council to achieve what few other entities in Aotearoa may have done to date. As a result, our tui relationship with Ngāi Tahu is highly valued and an integral part of how Environment Canterbury undertakes its responsibility for the environment and its community. Today, we recognise and pay tribute to the significant contribution Peter made to the environment, the community and our organisation for the benefit of the people of Waitaha, Canterbury and Aotearoa. Peter e te hoa, he was my friend. I was privileged to spend some time with Peter on the Thursday before he passed. We talked about a friendship covering more than 20 years as kaitiaki. I have since reflected on our journey and many things we covered and did not cover. We are from the older Ngāi Tahu kaitiaki generation after settlement. Peter found pleasure in restoring the streams at Koko Rārata. Stream restoration was our very foundation. The different hats we wore and working for our people at home. This also took us into the mahi of the iwi, the politics, the leaders of the day, many laughs, many reflections. It was a time of building relationships. This was important to Peter, and he always questioned his role in doing so with his networks such as councils, DOC, Fed Farmers, NGOs, Littleton Pork Company, community groups and landowners. He reflected on how he looked out over the gathering in the Whananui during his investiture, and he saw all the groups represented. He smiled at me and said, they were all there, Iho. We then shared what it meant to us to receive the New Zealand Order of Merit. He always considered that his mahi was just a given. It was meant to be for him to do. We had seen change and acknowledged pieces of mahi that we were proud to be part of and acknowledge. The young ones coming through. We are so proud to see the young ones coming through and that they will be replacing us. Finally, I leave you with a comment he made, which is so Peter. He always brought us back to it, and that is, it is all about the next generation, Iho. It is about whakapapa. Kia ora.
Thank you, Yvette. Now, I think we'll follow Councillor Craig Pauling with an opening, and then we will have a minute's silence to remember Peter. Thank you, Craig.
Tēnā koutou. Tēnei ngā mihi mahana kia kōrua Ian Yvette mō tō kōrua mihi whakamana ki Uncle Peter tēnā kōrua. He tautoko hau tō kōrua tino o mihi aroha ki te whānau Ramsden I tēnei wā pauri. Kua hinga te tōtara nui o te wā o nui o tānei, o tō whānau, o tō hapu, o tō tātou iwi, o kaitahu ka te māmoi Waitaha. Kuki o te hāpore o te pātaka o rākau hautu o Waitaha o Aotearoa. O Uncle Peter, te tangata Manawanui, te tangata Mananui, te tangata tū ki te tika. Moi mai, oki mai. Koe rā ki te taho o tō tātou tipuna kua whetu rangitia. Thank you, Uncle Peter, for your guidance and unwavering support. I will miss you dearly, but also smile when I visit the many places you have made a meaningful contribution to. Ka rata awa, te ara whānui o Makawhiu, o Para, Kawatea, o Kotaku Mairangi. Rātou, kia rātou, tātou kia tātou, nō reira, e karakia timatanga o tātou nei hui. Haia te awa, puti I tua, puti I waho. O te paki ako o te rākau o maire nuku, o maire raki, o maire tamaro whenua e. I roka tāne, I raro tāne, paku paku tāne, rakaihi tāne. No haka o te āriki ho atu au e tāne kiuta. Ki te tiritiri o te moana, o ngā pākihi whakateka o Waitaha, tūturu whakamoa kia tīna, haumie, huie, tā.
Ai ki e.
Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Pauling. Now, in acknowledgement of the passing of Peter Ramsden, we will have a minute's silence. Thank you everyone for observing that minute's silence in remembrance of Peter. Thank you everyone for observing that minute's silence so that we can all remember and reflect on the work that Peter Ramsden contributed. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to public forums and deputations and petitions. I just need to make a statement about a change in our agenda at this stage, as that's required under the standing orders. Our CE, Dr. Stephanie Rexer will actually provide some feedback at the end of the public forum session regarding letters and correspondence with the previous submitters to our public forum. And so we'll do that at the end of the session. So the first person to join us today in the public forum setting is Sarah van der Birch. So welcome to the meeting, Sarah, and thank you very much for coming along. And I believe you're going to speak to us about increasing bike ridership from Littleton to Christchurch. So welcome, and over to you.
Great, thank you. Kia ora and tēnā koutou katoa. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we could hear you, Sarah. That's
okay,
great.
Perfect. Thank you. So yes, I want to talk a little bit about the bikes, but just as a sort of set the context here, the 3 points that I'd really like to make is one, that we're coming as a community. So I know there's been a lot with the Cass Bay, Rapaki, the Kashmere High School students in terms of improving the bus service. And we'd really like to think about this as a community. We definitely would like to get the bikes through the tunnel more easily so we can increase ridership and get people out of their cars. And the third piece, and I'll talk to each of these little bullet points, is we'd really love to work, I think, in collaboration over consultation at this point. I know there's been a lot of consultation done, and it feels to me right now like the next step would be a good collaboration with ECAN and the broader community of Littleton, Cass Bay, Rapaki. So as to getting bikes through the tunnel, we definitely like our people who live here in our community to be able to ride their bikes into town as commuters, as students at school, etc. And right now, because of the capacity issues, I think, people don't trust that they can get their bikes on the bus any longer because there was quite an uptake of it. And so they come in and they get there to the bus stop down here, and all 3 bus stations on the bike rack is already taken. So then they have to wait for the next bus. And because the bus frequencies have been changed, that means they're going to be late potentially for work, late to school, etc. And they have the same issue coming in from town, coming back to Littleton, is they've had too many times where they've tried to get their bike on the bus and there hasn't been enough capacity, and therefore they have to wait. And take a later bus, which gets them home then obviously quite a bit later than they would have preferred. So then now people there's a lot of times where people who would have been doing it that don't. And one of the things that's interesting is we have people who go from Littleton into Christchurch with their students. They move there and rent their house out here so they can get their kids into Kashmere. And one of the things that so many of them talk about is how great it is for them to be able to ride their bikes as a family over there. And it's the one thing that they miss here. And so there's a number of us, but we'd really like to see if we can make this issue easier and easy to solve, really. We have a lot of ideas. I put up a Facebook post about a few months back, and I was surprised with the number and speed and the number of people who responded. There were at least 100. There were over 100 actually within about the first 10 or 15 minutes of putting it up. So there is interest, and we have some ideas. So for instance, if the bike rack is already loaded, can we get bikes, just a few bikes anyway, inside the bus? If we increase frequency of the buses, that would help the capacity issue. could we get something where people can put their bike on the bus and get off at the gondola for a reduced fare or no fare at all? Can we get a community van where we have volunteer drivers and we have some way to put the bikes in the bus, in the van, and just get them through? So there are a number of different ideas, but what we realize is not all of those ideas will be acceptable in the ECAM business model. So if we work together, that would really make some sense. So the final point, we'd really like to make it easier for people to get out of their cars and onto their bikes, get them through the tunnel, let them ride to work, let them ride to high school, let them just ride as a family. And we'd really like to do this as a broader community in collaboration with ECAN. Ngā mihi nui. Kia ora.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah, and I can't help but acknowledge your comments around the difference between consultation and collaboration. And it's all about getting action in this age of needing to reduce carbon emissions. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Now, I'll just see if there's a few questions. And I believe we have one person, one of the councillors, Councillor Elizabeth McKenzie, would like to ask a question. Thank you, Kath. Okay, thank you, Liz.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
It's Mackenzie here. I've just got a couple of questions. So, what you're asking for is that you can meet and talk with our staff about options for getting people back on their bikes, as I understand it. And I guess that would probably also include options like share bikes at each end, or things like that. What I would like to know is, what is your view on, for example, and this is into the far future, having light rail or rail going through, because you can put a lot more bikes on rail, for example.
Right. So I think there's a lot of people in Littleton who think, bring back the tram, and we'd love that. And any simple way to get our people on and off through the tunnel, etc., would be great. And again, for me, I want to figure out what's doable and then see what we can do to make that happen. And I'm not sure about light rail. There's so many things. And it would potentially be great if it's cost effective.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Now we have a question from Vicky Southworth.
Kia ora, Sarah. Thank you for your presentation. I was just interested. So, people have got an experienced different way of doing things when they've gone into the city and have realised that they're enjoying bikes. But do you think it's also, is this also part of just a community shift in terms of recognising the importance of moving out of our cars and the climate change effects, or is it about personal enjoyment and health? And if the former, if it is about climate change as well, would you see that, or might you see this as the start of collaborating on something bigger, that it could start with bikes but could evolve to something else?
So I'd say that both are true in terms of people want to reduce our emissions. We're looking at we have a carbon coach that Project Littleton has employed here in Littleton to figure out how we can get businesses, households, etc., to reduce the emissions. And we're looking at creating climate-friendly Littleton. So we're definitely interested. It's definitely a community that's interested in that. And then you also have to figure out, how do you get people to do it? So sometimes that is really about their personal interests. So I think it's a balance of both. And we have to meet people where they are. So I think that definitely there's a lot of people interested in reducing our emissions. And so getting people out of their cars. And there are a lot of people who haven't quite gotten there yet. But if we can get them on their bikes, we do get them out of their cars. So I think that that's really true, that it's both and. And for doing further, I think it would be great to create more of a collaborative relationship with ECAN and to use Littleton as a test ground, a place to experiment, because we're really good at that. And we love that. And we're really good at giving feedback. You know,
Thank you.
you'll never miss where we are.
Thank you, Sarah. That's excellent. Thank you for your answers. We'll just move on. Councillor Nicole Marshall has a question. Nicole.
Kia ora, thank you, Sarah, for a fantastic presentation. Just wanting to really clarify what it is specifically you're asking from us. There's been a lot of discussion around various options, but I'm just wanting to clarify what the specific ask is from your deputation today. Thank you.
So there's two things. One, easier ways to get the bikes through the tunnel, and two, to do it collaboratively versus in consultation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for this presentation, Sarah. And we'll just pass a resolution now around this. So we're going to move that the council receives the public forum item from yourself, and that we will provide a reply to you as soon as possible. So I'm moving that from the chair. Would you like to second that, Councillor Peter Scott?
I second that.
Thank you. I'll put that to the meeting. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 And if anybody against, there doesn't seem to be anybody against, that's carried. Thank you very much, Sarah. Now I'd like to welcome to the table Stephen Howard and Dot Lovell-Smith. If you'd like to pop your cameras back on if you wish to. You're from Keep Our Assets Canterbury, and you're going to be speaking to us about public transport. So I'm so glad you've come along. You get 10 minutes, and then we'll have a few short questions, and then we'll pass a resolution to get back to you. So over to you, Stephen. Thank you.
He waka ko tui kaori e tu kue ku ngā mimerehi. Dot Lovell and I are speaking today as members of COA. We are advocating for decisions made at the appropriate level by the people, for the people, and in order to do so, having public ownership of the assets as necessary. The whakatauki was about the strength we gain from being bound together in unity. Dot will speak first about our experience of public transport services and how she'd like to see them improved. Dot? Dot?
I'm just unmuting. Kia ora, tātou. Yeah, I'd like to just talk about my experience of riding on buses, because I know that there's expressed intentions to increase people's use of buses, but there, I live in Hei, which is a working class area near Hornby, and our experience of buses out this way is that, you know, quite often they're not fit for purpose. And Stephen's going to talk later about the split government model, which became competitive model of transport provision, which encourages managers to sort of not make a priority of the passenger, but make a priority of the profit. So in my experience, you know, we need more free buses or cheap buses. We need them to be more frequent so that people are not waiting. In our area, if we have to make a link between buses, it can be up to half an hour's wait, which is a long time to stand on a street if it's raining or it's cold or it's, you know, late at night. We need, there needs to be lots more publicity about buses, and if they become more frequent, there needs to be publicity about where you can pick them up, where you can have the links, how convenient it is. And I don't think institutions like ECAN and the council should depend on everybody having an iPhone or an app on their cell phone, because in my experience, there's quite often a time when your cell phone's batteries run out, or you've left it at home, or you don't even have one in the first place. So make the bus service very visible so that people know where to find them, how to get to them, and where to wait. I think there needs to be a lot more publicity. for taking, you know, to encourage people to take their kids to sport on buses, to go to special and special events. I seem to have strayed off the condition of buses. I'll go back to that now, okay? Yeah, so just in the last year or 6 months or so of riding buses, these are some of the things which I've noticed, which really put me off going on a bus again. Some of them are very jerky with their gear changes and their braking systems, so that, you know, you jerk violently forward and backwards in your seat. Some of them are very noisy and rattly. Some of the doors don't open properly, so you know, you're standing at the back of the bus, the door won't open, you have to stagger down the front. The stop bell doesn't work, so you have to shout to get attention for the driver to know when to let you off. The fold-up seats don't work, so people trying to get a pushchair on, you know, struggle to get the fold-up seat folded up so the pushchair can fit in. There's not enough room for pushchairs and wheelchairs. If one big pushchair is in that place where, you know, at the front there, it can go, you know, go over into the aisle, and then someone else can't get on with their pushchair or wheelchair. And in our area, I mean, we have two brothers, for example, who are both in pushchairs, not pushchairs, wheelchairs, so that if they want to travel together, there has to be room for the two wheelchairs. Sometimes the bus kneeling function doesn't work, so that you're, you know, I mean, I'm 75, and I sometimes find it a bit of a struggle to clamber down from a bus onto the footpath. Bike racks, just going back to that previous speaker, the bike racks are too high for me to lift my bike onto, so that cuts out, you know, combination of bus and bike riding. What else did you do? Yeah, I should say that in the last couple of weeks, I've had a few rides on some of the new electric buses, or new buses which have been put into our area, which I'm very grateful for. And there's such a difference between them and the old ones. When I've talked to drivers about things like the jerkiness, they quite often say, well, they're not serviced often enough because the money's not there to pay for adequate servicing. And I think this is one of the features of the split model of, or the competitive model of providing buses. I think Stephen's probably going to, oh, I know the other one I think is really worth getting into. And again, it follows on from that previous speaker who's talking about encouraging people to use buses by providing space for bikes, is pets on buses. I mean, how many times do you sort of say, oh, I've got to take the car because I'm taking the dog, or I'm taking the cat to the vet, or something like that. And I suspect that the rule against pets on buses stems right back to the hydatids epidemics way back in the 50s and 60s. And these don't exist anymore. So why haven't we got pets on buses? Okay, I'll finish there and let Stephen carry on with his part of the presentation. Thanks very much.
So thank you, Dot. So in order to meet the carbon budget and deliver a fully integrated public transport system, local government, both ECAN and the city councils and the district councils, need to work together. We have noted that the fares that are collected on the buses do very little in way of financing the public transport, and the really big spends in transport are motorways and roads. So reducing transport by having public transport is actually a saving in the overall picture. Also, to make public transport effective, strong consideration should be given in how development occurs in the region. Sprawl all over the plains will not be compatible with public transport. And so it's quite good to see that the ECAN has now got a Transport and Development Committee and is seeing those things in the same light. At the moment, the routes are set by ECAN, and the infrastructure and things like bus stops, shelters and the exchange are managed by CCC. ECAN tenders for the routes, and the use of competitive tenders in a market is designed to drive down the costs. And the only way that costs can be reduced are lower wages and conditions for drivers, worse vehicles, fewer trips by buses, and all the large cities which have followed this model and privatised the bus services have suffered shortages of drivers, strikes, buses needing to be taken off the road for safety reasons, and a generally poorer quality of service, none of which encourage the use of public transport. We also have major rail corridors between the city and outlying places such as Waipara, Ashburton, Darfield and Littleton, and rail really must be part of any integrated public transport plan. Parallel to ECAN and the CCC's public transport policies is the work the Ministry and Waka Kotahi do, and they're major infrastructure funders. But it doesn't seem like an integrated effort, especially in terms of public transport and the reducing the carbon emissions situation. So the separation of functions between ECAN, the central government, and CCC alongside Selwyn and Waimakariri DCs and the provision of transport, both public and private, is a problem. The Mayor of CCC, Leanne, has often reacted to Coast's submission in its annual plan and those sections dealing with transport by saying CCC is constrained by PTOM, the Public Transport Operating Model, and ECAN's role in the tendering process, not to mention decisions made by Waka Kotahi and the Ministry of Transport. There's an imperative need to move away from that siloed, competitive and corporate models of delivery brought in by successive governments in the 1980s and 90s to a more cooperative and holistic approach for the future of both the people and the planet. It was pleasing to see that the Greater Christchurch Partnership in June last year submitted in the review on public transport that the PTOM must be changed away from that commercial model in order to meet our transport and development needs. So what we're asking ECAN Council to do today is to pass a motion asking Jenny Huey and Leanne Dozell to make direct approach to the Transport Minister, demanding that the PTOM be modified to allow a truly integrated public transport system to be established and maintained in the Greater Christchurch area without that competitive commercial model which pushes towards a cheap, nasty and ineffective system with privatisation. Thank you for your time and listening.
Oh, thank you very much for your presentation, Stephen, and thank you to Dot. It's good to hear about experience of people on our buses. Is there some questions? Councillor Edge, would you like to go first?
Thanks, Stephen and Dot. I haven't really got a question, but the issues you raised are issues that generally our transport team have been looking at for quite a while in terms of comfort. We have what's called a public transport futures program, and we are in partnership with Waimakariri and Selwyn and Christchurch City that we discuss these issues, development and transportation. And you're correct, the PTOM discussion, we are currently waiting on replies from the government to see what their review of that PTOM modelling system is all about. But look, Dot's raised a whole lot of sort of comfort type issues, and I think it might be useful for us in our reply to reply to you about some of the things that that are underway at the moment. So thanks very much for your presentation. It just highlights the public interest in our transport system.
Thank you, Grant. Councillor Phil Clearwater, have you got a question?
Thanks, Jenny. And not a question, just a quick comment, if I may. So, and thank you, Dot and Stephen, for your deputation in the public forum today. Yeah, and Dot, I guess you certainly clarified what you meant by the buses sometimes being not fit for purpose. You gave us quite a list, and I, for one, councillor, and I'm sure others will take it on board. And I think I would have said it, except I was going to comment to Stephen that I'm sure that he would agree that some good work was done by ECAN in having the living wage advanced. I think as early as September last year we signed that off. And we take your comments on board too, though, about the need to support drivers. Thank you.
Well, thank you both very much. I've got a bit of a malfunctioning camera at my end, so I'll leave it off. I don't think there's any other questions at the moment, but certainly thank you for raising the PTOM question and the fact that it should be modified. Just so you know that there is quite a lot of discussion going along those lines, and certainly talking to the Minister could be something that we consider. And thank you very much, Doc, for your very clear, frank overview of what some of the buses are like, and apologies for that. That's why we're trying to get these great electric buses, and I'm glad that you've found those much nicer. They certainly look fantastic to me. So thanks for coming in, and we'll just pass a resolution. I'll move from the chair and hopefully seconded by Councillor Peter Scott.
Seconded.
Thank you, Peter. That we receive the public forum from both of you, and that we provide a reply to you as soon as we can get around to it. So I'll just ask everybody to vote for that. All those in favour, please indicate or say aye.
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 Thank you very much, everybody. That is carried. And thank you. We'll finish that part of the session. Now, one of the problems we have now is that we're going to, are you there, Robin? We are actually going to adjourn at 12. Yeah, hi. I'm just wondering, I'm not sure that we've got enough time to continue now with your session, since you've got 10 minutes to speak, and we are actually adjourning at 12 o'clock because we have a hearing before a parliamentary select committee that's been put on us unexpectedly on our council meeting day that we have to comply with. So are you available to come back at 2 o'clock this afternoon?
Sure, no problem. I'll make it work. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great. Otherwise, you could come to our next meeting. But anyway, that'd be lovely. So if we'll send you a link, or we'll make sure you're set up to come back to the next meeting. So thank you very much. So we'll just go on with the meeting now for a minute, and then we'll re-adjourn at 2 o'clock. First of all, apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Megan Hands. So we will note that apology. And the second thing is conflicts of interest. I don't think I've been advised that anybody else has any conflicts of interests that different to what we already have notified by council members. So just to move forward, do we know if we could actually deal with the petition? But I understand is Jenny Healy online? Do you know if she's on here, Phil?
My understanding is that Jenny was online. I presume she still is.
Can someone tell me if Jenny's still online? I'm just looking.
Yes, I'm online.
Oh, she is online. Thank you very much, Natasha, for your assistance today. So we might just present the petition now, because I think we've got time to do that, Phil. Is that all right with you?
That's absolutely fine with me. And perhaps just to clarify the process, Jenny, because it's good that Jenny Healy is online too from Cass Bay residents, but just to ensure, with this being a virtual meeting, normally my understanding would be that with a petition, a councillor would pass that to you as chair, and councillors though won't be able to see this petition, the prayer or the petition. So would you like Jenny Healy to read that, or would you like me to read some of it?
I understood that you were going to read the prayer, Councillor Clearwater, and that you will hand us the petition by us getting it collected from your house. So people won't be able to see it, but if you'd like to read out the prayer, and that Jenny's just here to listen. So if you do that, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to do that. And I know Rod Service, who was assistant in this area, was online earlier too. But councillors will have heard from the Cass Bay residents before, so this is now their petition. in terms of what they would like to see. So it's around improving the Route 28 bus route so that in fact it actually meets the needs of the Cass Bay community. And by Cass Bay community, the petitioners mean the three bays like Rapaki, Cass Bay and Corsair Bay. So what the petition is, as the bus review for Route 28 and 17 will not be implemented until 2023, the undersigned petitioners from Cass Bay community request action before the beginning of the 2022 academic year for the between 29 and 35 students who will be attending Cashmere High from those three bays. We also request that the review considers extending the 28 bus route twice during the day at approximately 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. to cater for the needs of locals, particularly the elderly, going to the city for doctors, hospital appointments, shopping and the bank. This would enable people coming to the local beaches also to use the bus and reduce traffic congestion and parking problems. And the petition is signed by 70 local people. My suggestion would be that I'm also quite happy to discuss through the chief, Stephanie as our chief executive, to have some discussions with transport staff. The petitioners have also made a lot of really helpful, sensible suggestions, and I'd like to be able to do that, say, with the co-chairs of the Transport and Urban Development Committee, Councillor Grant Edge and Councillor Peter Scott.
Thank you, Councillor Clearwater. So now I'll take it that you are moving the resolution that we received the petition tabled by yourself and on behalf of the Cass Bay community regarding improving the bus 28 route. Yes, and that will provide a reply to the petitioners as soon as practical. So that's moved by Councillor Clearwater. Would you like to second that, Councillor Grant Edge?
Yes, I'll second that. Thank you.
All right, I'll put that to the meeting. All those in favour, please say aye or indicate. Or
aye.
Okay. Aye. If there's nobody opposed, there doesn't seem to be, that's carried. Thank you very much for that, and thank you to the residents for providing the petition. I think what we need to do now is adjourn the meeting until 2 o'clock. Is there anything else, Council Secretary Petraea, that we need to do now?
No, that's fine. We'll just adjourn until 2 p.m. and be back online 5 minutes before if possible.
Okay, so we need a resolution to move into adjourning?
No, we're okay. All right.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll see everybody back here at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Jenny.
Petraea, sorry, and Juliet, are you happy that we can proceed?
Yes, we've got quorum.
Okay, thank you. So when we left the session, we had left Robin Barraclough hanging, and so we'll ask Robin to come forward and to make his presentation. He will be speaking about the development of a cycle to work scheme which would promote the uptake of cycling through salary sacrifice, making the purchase of a bicycle and safety equipment cheaper for employees. So welcome, Robin. You've got 10 minutes, as I'm sure you're aware. We'll let you know at 9, and then we'll have some questions after that. And just the other point is that Jenny is an apology after the session. She's online, but she's an apology after the session. So away you go, Robin.
Thank you very much for that, and kia ora, everybody. So to begin with, it's worth stating that changing people's transport habits is complex. There's lots of push and pull factors which influence what method any individual uses. And I'd like to thank councillors for the work that they already do in promoting cycling within the city and the region. I think that's worth noting. The problem is, though, that, and this is NZTA data, that 90% of all our car journeys here in New Zealand are made by a solo occupant, 66% of those car journeys being 6 kilometres or less. Short distance trips are particularly polluting, as cold engines consume around 40% more fuel. As a country, we're committed to decarbonising by 2050. One of the largest areas of carbon production in New Zealand is our transport system. And moving to electric vehicles isn't a simple solution either. They aren't fully carbon zero due to the way they're manufactured. And the way the electricity they run on is produced is also an issue. Additionally, evidence from a large scientific study last year suggested that the move to electric vehicles alone to move to carbon zero is not going to go fast enough. It's going to take at least 20 years plus to replace many of our fossil fuel vehicle fleets. The paper compared the life cycle of many modes of transport, taking into account carbon generated by making the vehicle, fueling it and disposing of it, and found that emissions from cycling can be 30 times lower for each trip than driving a fossil fuel car, and about 10 times lower than driving an electric car. Christchurch City Council and ECAM are already and continue to do much to make cycling safer and more convenient, but that's only part of the issue with regard to bicycle uptake. Bicycles, including e-bikes, and the equipment to use them safely is often expensive, and for those on a low wage is a barrier. To make cycling more accessible, I'd like to suggest that Christchurch and Canterbury needs to consider a suite of measures to facilitate the purchase and use of bicycles. For example, the UK set up a cycle to work scheme in 1999 to improve employees' fitness and reduce the impact on the environment from commuting. The UK cycle to work schemes now has over 50,000 businesses partaking in it, and more than 2,000 bicycle retailers, both online and local, involved in the scheme. It's a form of salary sacrifice underwritten by the UK Inland Revenue Department, and the sacrifice salary is taken off the gross salary, meaning an employee pays less tax on the equipment. Thus, depending on how you're taxed, savings are anywhere between 25 to 39%, quite significant. These kinds of arrangements are helpful for those on a low income as a means to access a form of transport to work. Importantly, in the UK, the scheme must not reduce employees' earnings below the national wage. So here's my request. I'd love to see maybe a little bit more ambition here in Christchurch. I'd like us to become the most cycle-friendly city in the Southern Hemisphere. Other major cities like Manchester and the UK have decided to place cycling at the heart of their transport future, and they've established a cycling czar, Olympian Sir Chris Hoy, to front foot that campaign. To this end, I'd like ECAN to consider developing pilot schemes in conjunction with employers, which might include salary sacrifice and/or cycle sharing as a means to promote cycling to work, especially for those on lower incomes. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Robin. That's a good challenge for us. I'm looking for questions, and we've got a question. The first question is from Councillor Elizabeth Mackenzie, then Councillor Southworth, then Councillor Ian Mackenzie, in that order. Thank you.
Hi, Robin, and thank you for coming to present. I've just got a couple of questions around sharing bikes and what I guess and sharing cars and things like that. And I just want to ask, if you live in Littleton, for example, it can be quite tricky to actually sort of get your bicycle there because of the tunnel, etc. Do you think that bike share, or perhaps checking a bike out from your local library, things like that, would be helpful? And where do you see bicycles and trams or rail being part of the future, as opposed to bicycles on buses? Because buses just have a limited amount of bikes they can get on them. So
from countries like, so to answer your questions, from countries like the United Kingdom, there's actually really good evidence that cycle sharing works extremely well, particularly with regard to the commute or the travel to work, and often if it's involving the employer, schemes like that are often extremely successful. So there's good evidence for that now. I acknowledge, as you point out, that there are some local challenges here in New Zealand, in Christchurch, with places like Littleton. And I think they require some innovative solutions, which I think we've already heard some ideas from some local people already this morning to solve that. I think certainly from the paper I read last year, which was a massive scientific study, multi-country, over and involving a large number of scientists, it suggested that actually one of the best solutions, not only to decarbonize, but to actually get our not only our transport systems ready for the future, was actually, and probably cheaper than many other solutions, is to make cycling central to the way that many people get around, and that's got to integrate seamlessly with the other modes of transport, particularly public transport in the city. So I would see that. I would love to have a light rail or tram system where I can use a bicycle on and off. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Vicky.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Thanks for your presentation. I was interested in, we have policy of health in all policies in Environment Canterbury, and I'm just wondering, you've spoken about the carbon issue and reducing emissions in that sense, but have you got any evidence, or have you been able to, or can you give some sense of just how much opportunity there might be for helping with the health back community? And I'm thinking not just in terms of physical, getting out of a car and participating in exercise, but also in terms of air quality. I just wonder if you have anything on any of that.
I mean, I think there's extremely good evidence in the sort of negative that correlates well with vehicle emissions and particulates within our cities. But are you asking how does cycling influence or change the drop in that? I don't have any specific evidence on that. But yeah, the science around air pollution and particulates and vehicle emissions is very well established, and certainly in places like the United Kingdom, it's now well known that over 30 to 40,000 deaths per annum can be associated with air pollutions. So but I'm not sure that is precisely answers the question you were asking.
Yeah, no, it does, in that I was looking for the link, given that Environment Canterbury has a responsibility around air quality, I guess the more that we can get people out of cars and onto bikes or walking, the more we can reduce our emissions, and those emissions particulates do have a health effect, which is well demonstrated. So I think we can probably just make a linear conclusion.
I think I would have thought so, yeah. Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. We spend, what was it, nearly $100 million on trying to make a bus system work around Christchurch for a very small proportion of the population. Are you suggesting, I take it from your comments that, and I don't want to misquote you, but that you would rather we devote more attention to bicycles than we would public transport? Because in a community, relatively modest community like Christchurch and Canterbury, we probably haven't got enough money to do everything.
No. To be precise, I'd far rather us promote cycling at the expense of car use, and I think that's where the gains are if we really want to reduce both our CO2 emissions and pollution, and improve the general health and well-being of the people of this region. Then I'd rather see the pushes and pulls, those pluses and minuses around cars and cycling. I think they're the two things. But I wouldn't want to see people using public transport penalised in any way.
Hey, thank you, Robin. I can't see any more questions at this stage, so thank you for coming today and bringing this to us and putting up that challenge to us. I guess it's something that we need to consider.
Most cycle-friendly city in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now we've got if you'd like to just stay online, we'll pass this resolution, and then that puts it in the council's business, and you will get a reply to this so that you know that we've taken what you're saying seriously. So we've got a motion here that the council receives the public forum from Robin Barraclough regarding the development of a cycle to work scheme, which would promote the uptake of cycling through salary sacrifice, making the purchase of a bicycle and safety equipment cheaper for employees. And two, provides and that we will provide a reply to Robin Barraclough as soon as practical. Can somebody put their hand up as mover for that? Or I will move that, actually. I will move that motion. I have a seconder. So we've got a seconder from Councillor Southworth. Unless you are against, I'll take everyone's that as an aye. So thank you. That is passed. So thank you very much, Robin, for coming online. And our apologies that we had another piece of business that we had to leave you in the lurch on, and you've been very patient with us. So thank you for that too. All right. All right, councillors, we'll move now to our next item on the agenda, which is agenda item 5, extraordinary and urgent business. Is there any extraordinary and urgent business? There does not seem to be. And so we'll move to 6, which is the notices of motion. And we do have a notice of motion before us at the moment. And I will put it to you that Environment Canterbury consider the notice of motion submitted by myself, Councillor Scott. So I will move it, and seconded by Councillor Apanui. Can you confirm that's right, Councillor Apanui?
Confirmed.
Thank you. And the motion is before you. So we'll move into discussion. So I reserve my right to talk at the end of this rather than now. So I'll move to Councillor Apanui for a discussion.
Thank you, Peter. The notice of motion that we have before us is that the Regional Transport Committee forms a working group to investigate opportunities to progress passenger rail in Canterbury and provide spearhead work for the South Island Regional Transport Committee Chairs Group. This has been brought about by the aspirations, I suppose, of the South Island Regional Transport Committee Chairs Group, and as well as constituent submissions, both on the RLTP and the LTP that we did last year. This notice of motion is a very powerful signal for the Canterbury Regional Council to send our partners that we want to have a joint approach to accessing Canterbury as a whole. In doing this, we move closer to the aspirations of safer and more efficient transport, doing our part for greenhouse gas and emission reduction. And in doing so, we create a direction for the South Island Regional Transport Committee's Chairs Group to follow. The Canterbury Regional Council is expected to lead in this area, so let's lead.
Thank you, Councillor Apanui. So we'll have people that are supporting this or people that are against it. So next, Councillor Elizabeth McKenzie.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would like to speak in support of this notice of motion brought by Councillor Apanui. I do believe that we need to have a united voice in Canterbury and around the South Island to support regional rail, passenger rail and freight. And I particularly see this as a good step in the right direction because it specifically mentions passenger rail, and any improvements and progress that we have in passenger rail is going to pay off in the area of freight and vice versa. And so I see this as a very important step forward for rail in our region. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Edge. Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Edge.
Thanks, Councillor Scott and Tane. Yes, no, look, I'm supporting the motion. I think it's timely that we get on with discussing rail. Certainly, Greater Christchurch Partnership has been in the background. I was wondering if just a question really, do you anticipate more engagement with New Zealand Rail as part of this working group?
Tane?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Grant. Look, well, I should say we, by virtue of having Kiwi Rail joining us at RTC as of the end of last year, our lines of communication with them are nicely opened for this discussion to sort of take place, Grant. And they're very open to this, and I've had a lot of positive correspondence from them.
Councillor Ian McKenzie.
Tane or Peter is the mover of the motion. Do you have a view as to what this working group might cost in terms of ratepayers' money? So this is for the costing of the working group rather than introducing passenger rail.
I'd like to think we could keep the costs reasonably low. As we all sit on this council, the RTC, as we all sit on that committee, and most of us are paid elected officials, I shouldn't imagine there's going to be too much external input, but I'll leave that to Peter to answer that in a bit more depth.
Look, for complete accuracy, I'd have to check on this, but I know that during our LTP discussion, we had this discussion about have we got enough money to be looking at these things going forward, and if I recall correctly, and maybe Elizabeth spoke to this in terms of putting more money in our LTP plan, and I'm sure that there's enough there to get this started in this term for us to start this discussion anyway.
So,
look, if you don't mind, Peter, further to that, and this is going to be mostly the mayors of the region in conjunction with Ngāi Tahu, as this sort of extends through the Ngāi Tahu Takiwā.
And that's a good point. Sorry, Phil, before you say that, the RTC members are all mayors, and so their support of this will give us some recognition of where we need to go with this going forward. And they're all, I guess, paid employees across the TAs. Councillor Clearwater.
Oh, thanks, Peter, and thanks, Tane. Yes, look, as I've indicated, I'm supportive of the concept of investigating these opportunities for passenger rail. I had wondered why shouldn't also include freight lines. So perhaps you could let us know that, Tane. The other question, though, I have too, is how, in fact, you would see this work is going to be done by the Regional Transport Committee Chairs Group. How, in fact, that can be aligned with the group which the Greater Christchurch Partnership have already well begun with the mass rapid transit business cases. How in fact, are we going to ensure that the piece of work that's being done by the Regional Transport Committee is in fact aligned to mass rapid transit, especially in connection with future shape of the greater city, like the urban form?
Look, can I just jump in there and talk to that? I think one of the things that this notice of motion does is bring to a head people's belief that we should be having this discussion. When it goes into the RTC process, we do have Waka Kotahi sitting at that table with us as a member, and we will have a full and frank discussion about that tomorrow. This motion is brought before our council to support the concept of this going forward, and you know, if it survives or fails here, it will probably still go to RTC in terms of looking at what they think, because gauging what they've told us and in socialising that over the last 3 years, we believe there's an opportunity here. So, and we also believe there's an opportunity across the South Island to have a closer conversation. And maybe one of the end points for this will be the fact that Kiwi Rail will join us in a more of a RTC position, in a permanent position, because at the moment they're just sitting on RTC as an observer. I'm not sure if that answers you correctly or not, but Tumu Taiao Cranwell is next.
Kia ora tātou, nei te mea atu ki a koutou. Councillor McKenzie and Councillor Clearwater have asked my questions, but I'll just speak as well, just in support of the notice of motion and just say that I've been waiting since 2019 for this to come across the table, and I really applaud Councillor Apanui for pushing this through. I wish I could vote on it, but hopefully if the select committee goes well in Parliament, that by 2022 October, someone of Maito will be able to vote in the full committee council meeting. Nō reira, kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, Jan. Councillor Farm.
Kia ora. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Apanui, and really support this, especially just the focused group, to really take hold of those opportunities as you described them, Councillor Scott. So yeah, nice one, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Southworth.
Kia ora. Yeah, thank you to the councillors and particularly Tane, Councillor Apanui bringing this one. It's something we desperately need. We hear about climate change all the time. Rail, especially electric rail, is hugely efficient in comparison with really any other mode of transport, and there isn't nearly enough of it yet. And this raises our interest, shows that we are keen to see more done about rail, and so I think absolutely the right thing to do, and I totally support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pauling.
Tēnā koe tāne, ka nui te mihi ki a koe mō tō mahi tēnei kaupapa. Just wanted to acknowledge Tane for his work on this, and of course the support he's had from other councillors and work on the Regional Transport Committee. Yeah, look, I support this. I too have been eagerly waiting some movement on this. I always think about rail when I took a trip overseas, and you see some of the infrastructure that they have in other countries, and we wonder, I wonder why we can't do something, and the longer we wait, the more expensive things will be. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion and the extension of this later on. So kia ora.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pauling. I think unless there's anybody else, I think we're getting to the end of this discussion. So I'll circle back to Councillor Apanui for some final comments, then I'll close this out and put it to the vote. So Councillor.
Oh, look, I suppose the last 2 years it's been a bit of a struggle to get to this point, but something that Councillor Clearwater said to me when we first got in the building is that alignment is really important if you want to get things to move. And we didn't have that alignment until KiwiRail really joined the RTC at the end of last year. So by them coming to RTC, now we've got that alignment to start progressing some other work programs in the future. I'd like to thank Elizabeth McKenzie, or Councillor Elizabeth McKenzie, who has been a really good sounding board throughout this process, and our two Tumu Taiao, who I've engaged with in the last couple of weeks.
Thank you, Tane. And also, I will reinforce that the work that you've done has been significant in this. And I know that you've been pushed around a bit and knocked around a bit, and also the work that Councillor Elizabeth McKenzie's done on this has been really helpful in terms of trying to get this to where we've got it to. And so I'm happy enough to put this motion to the council right now, that the council supports the following notice of motion to be moved at the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee on Thursday, the 17th of February 2022. And that motion is that the Canterbury Regional the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee forms a working group to investigate opportunities to progress passenger rail in Canterbury and provide and spearhead work for the South Island Regional Transport Committee Chairs Group. So we've got a mover and a seconder, which is myself and Tane, and I'll put this to the vote. And if there's any dissenters, just put your hand up. Otherwise, I'll take it the fact that you have voted yes. So all those in favour, all those against. So that is carried. Well done, Tane. So good luck tomorrow for this when we go to RTC. Now we're going to circle back because I've made my a bit of a mistake here, and we haven't reported back. Stephanie was going to report back on earlier public forums. So we'll do this now, Stephanie, if you're available to do that.
Kia ora tātou, councillors. Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just update on some of the responses from public fora at the end of last year. For the 9th of December council meeting, we had Ms. Nahuia Freed who presented to us, and that was with regard to the bus network. And on the 16th of December, Chair Huey responded, and the response acknowledged Ms. Freed's presentation, but also provided some information with regard to the work that we do with regard to the reliable public transport service, and in particular, the response noted reviews to route number 17 and 28 that were underway, and some of the proposed changes with regard to frequencies. Similarly, at the 9th of December council meeting, we also heard from Kathy Lum-Webb, Cass Bay Residents Association, Luana Swindell, and Kitty Couch. And as you'll be aware, obviously the petition, which we heard today through Councillor Clearwater, but there were also responses to them prior to today that provided further information with regard to the route changes, and particularly Route 28. On the 16th of December, we heard from Mr. Ross Holston, Greater Hornby Residents Association, and Mr. Mike Mora, and they presented to council with regard to setbacks for quarries, the investigation into the filling and rehabilitation of the quarry at 199 Old West Coast Road. And Chair Huey has responded to those on the 2nd of February, clarifying that the quarry setbacks were considered during the Christchurch City Council district plan process, and advising that the Christchurch City Council does not have plans to revisit the rules in relation to setbacks. And regarding the 199 Old Coast Road, as a result of new information supplied by the landowner, we have engaged an independent contaminated site specialist to conduct a fresh review. I understand he was on site last Friday, and so that work is ongoing, and I can report that in the future. I'd also like to note that the council certainly, and the chair noted, that we really appreciated Mr. Holston's and Mr. Moore's support and commendation to the council regarding the co-design workshops. And I might just finish with one more, Chair, and that is with regard to the 16th of December. You'll recall that we had a public forum and deputation with regard to wallaby control from Nikki Snoyink and Matt Simpson. They too have received replies, and in that reply, we've outlined the National Wallaby Eradication Program and regional implementation within Canterbury overall. We also discussed the different funding options, including targeted rates and greater landowner input with regard to increased effort in the wallaby control. And councillors, I just point your attention to the Natural Environment Committee agenda for the 23rd of February. There is a paper on this topic there where further conversation can be had. Thank you very much, Chair. I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie, for that. I think that's pretty straightforward and answers most of the queries that I've heard. And if everyone's happy with that, we'll move to item 7. Okay, so item 7's the unconfirmed minutes of council on the 9th and the 16th of December. And both the open minutes and the public excluded minutes. They're on page 5 of your agenda and page 2 of the public excluded agenda. Are there any items of accuracy relating to the open and public excluded minutes of the meeting of the 9th and 16th of December 2021? So I'll take it that there are no items, there are no corrections or amendments to be made. So I'll put this to you that the council confirms the open and public excluded minutes from council meeting held on the 9th and the 16th of December 2021. Do I have a mover, please, for that?
John Sunkel.
John Sunkel, and a seconder, please.
Grant Edge.
Grant Edge. So I recognise the fact that you've got a mover and a seconder. So all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against. That is carried. So thank you for that. That makes the next part of this meeting quite simple in terms of moving to item 8, reports, and 8 specifically next is item 8.1, notification of items released from the public excluded agenda on page 26 of the agenda. Firstly, I will put the motion and then there'll be an opportunity for discussion. The recommendation is on page 26 of the agenda and it's also on your screen in front of you. and that the council receives the report as notification that the resolution to appoint Jane Demeter for the role of independent co-chair of the Canterbury Water Management Strategy CWMS Committee, made at the council meeting on the 6th of October 2021, has been approved for release. So I'll look for a mover for that, please.
Lan Farm, thanks, Peter.
Yeah, and Craig Pauling for a seconder. So thank you for that. Is there any discussion about that item? If there's no discussion.
Oh, kia ora, Peter. It's Craig here.
Sorry, okay, Craig.
Yeah, kia ora, koutou. Yeah, just like to speak to this. As people will be aware, you know, we've been working on the revitalisation of the regional committee for a while now, and it's really great to see this go to the public. To congratulate Jane and the other members that have been put on the committee. I really look forward to their work over the next while, and to see what they can bring to the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, as well as the work we have ahead of us around Te Manawa Te Wai and water management. So just wanted to congratulate them and thank everyone for their patience and effort, and also to acknowledge the former members of the regional committee as well.
Yeah, thank you. And Lana, I should have actually gone back to you first as the mover, or I can go to you last as the mover. Is there anything you would like to say?
All good, thank you, Peter. No, great to have Jane in the role, and look forward to the committee forming, and hopefully our first meeting is scheduled for April at this stage. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. So I'll put the motion as it is on your screens at the moment. So all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, raise your hand. So the motion is carried. Thank you very much. So we'll move now on to 8.2. Again, notification of items released from public excluded, and it is on your screen. Firstly, I'll put that motion, and you can all read it, so I won't go through it again. So do I have a mover for that motion, please?
Grant Edge.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. And a seconder.
The second is Lan. Oh, sorry, is Ian seconding? I'm happy for him to second.
Yeah, Ian's seconder. So thank you for a mover and seconder. Is there any discussion on those items? So I'll go to the seconder first. Ian, do you want to make a comment?
No.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Grant?
Oh, just a congratulations to all of those people who've been appointed. They're all, I think, familiar with the CWMS, been on zone committees and well respected for their views within the community. And so it's a good mix of people, and I'm sure the committee and their future agenda will be an expression of them trying to address the issues that are currently before us as a regional council. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. If there's no further discussion, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 If you are against, put your hand up. So that is also, that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Now, yeah, item 8.3, and again, I think what we'll do is we'll go to Alina. Alina, are you there? Alina Toppler is going to introduce this item, and we'll go to the recommendation at the end of Alina's conversation.
Peter, I think it's Councillor Southworth is going to.
Oh, okay. My notes are wrong then. So my apologies, Alina. I don't want to throw you under a bus here. So Vicky.
All right, kia ora. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, just this is a standing item that we have on our council meeting every time, and it's put there every meeting to recognise the significance of climate change And what we try to do is bring something different to each council meeting from different parts of our organisation, just to demonstrate how climate change is really across everything that we do, but also that all of those different parts are thinking about how we work towards the building with both resilience and also, of course, reducing emissions. In this case, we're bringing a letter which has gone to the ministers who are responsible for the Climate Emergency Response Fund, and it's been signed by our chair and also a couple of chairs from 2 other regional councils. And this is very much in the resilience, a resilience story, and it's asking for additional funding and support through that Climate Emergency Response Fund for our flood schemes, for flood protection schemes more widely at a national level. And this is to recognise that protection from flooding is of importance to local communities, those that are directly impacted, but it also is important both for regional and also at a national level in terms of community wellbeing and resilience. One of the examples given in the letter, which is included in the agenda and is worth reading, is the Westport flood, where a $10 million investment in a piece of infrastructure could have prevented $100 million worth of damage. And so that really speaks for itself in terms of benefit cost of these types of schemes when well designed. But also importantly in the letter, it raises the potential to weave biodiversity and whole of catchment approach and to acknowledge the cultural value of our rivers to iwi, but I think also to all of us. In terms of, with the correct, with a decent amount of funding, it's not just simply building embankments. We can do more than that and incorporate these other values and do a whole of catchment approach. So yeah, the letter's worth a read. Hopefully you've read it already. But it's really building on existing schemes and the capability that our staff have in terms of delivering on biodiversity and flood protection and so on, asking for the government to contribute more and help us build resilience. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see, Ian, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, look, if I could just add to the comments that Vicky's made, and although the final report hasn't been released yet and full publicity around that has been handled out of Wellington by John Hutchins, he has said to me that we can talk about it in general terms to help pave the way for when they do make their final case to government. And if I might quote John Hutchins, or I'm not sure if it's the report or John Hutchins, but what he said is, and this corresponds with the comments that Vicky's already made, is that we know that floods in New Zealand is most frequent and most significant and most avoidable natural hazard. And as Vicky's quite clearly articulated, it's actually relatively modest amounts of money in total that can make a huge difference to New Zealand's resilience to climate change.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. We now have Councillor Clearwater.
Thank you for the report on this and for speaking to that, Vicky. My question really is sort of also where to from here, besides this request to and business case to central government. I just want to go to, so you know where I'm coming from, I'll just go back to the time of the Christchurch earthquakes, and particularly following them when there were ongoing quakes, and groups of residents worked together to actually look after each other, and in a real sense formed what we called community resilience. I also saw evidence of that, and I'm sure we all did, at the time of the Westport floods, which are referred to in the letter and the report, where clearly communities banded together to basically save themselves in that ongoing disasters. So my question really is that besides the concept of flood protection, is the potential for perhaps your committee and even through, say, this fund to look at how, in fact, small communities might be able to actually, I guess, be supported to work together to actually form that, I guess, that community resilience as against the hardware. Yes.
Sorry, Phil, are you, Councillor Clearwater, are you suggesting this is something that the Climate Change Action Committee could take on board and do something through that, or is this a sub-catchment committee where I know there is work going on around looking at each individual the catchment schemes and looking to integrate some of those and have whole of catchment type approaches?
Thanks, Vicky. I think because some of our biggest populations are clearly the city and Greater Christchurch, I think it would be something that the wider Climate Change Committee could I really, I guess I'm asking if a committee like yours could look at how that issue could be addressed.
Hey,
That's a good
sorry,
suggestion.
I'll let you go. Let you go, Vicky. Keep going.
No, I was just going to say that sounds like a good suggestion, and so can we put that as a note to then our staff to look at that? Certainly, we've talked about resilience in previous portfolio when we had the hazards, risk and resilience work and community resilience. Of course, everybody supporting each other is a really critical part of
Look, can I just respond to that, Phil? I was going to ask Stephanie to round out this discussion in terms of process and where we're at and how we handled this initial report and this, I guess, this request for funds to help us through this at the end of this discussion. And I still will do that. But we've got Councillor Edge next, and then Councillor Sunkel. And Councillor McKenzie, Ian McKenzie, again.
Thanks, Peter. Just a question, really. On item 10, it says that the letter was also accompanied by a business case. Is that a separate document? I just wonder if somebody could confirm that.
The business cases were
a staff member, please. Is a staff member available to confirm?
Stephanie will speak to it now, maybe, Stephanie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Edge, this has been ongoing. Recall that when we had the floods at the end of May, our council engaged with the regional sector to further progress the conversation with central government regarding business cases. This was something regional sector had started prior to our floods, and the report that is due out includes us as a case study of our experiences in the late May, early June floods of 2021. And the business case continues to be to central government that this is critical infrastructure, protecting both national, regional, and local infrastructure, that the current rating position does not enable protection of the assets that now exist, residential, commercial, and lifeline assets. And so these particular business cases are intended to go to the government in the future, which the regional sector has done as a whole together. And we are part of that, and we have previously shared with councillors drafts, and I'm expecting a final report to come forward to you all very shortly. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Pete. Just a comment on that then. It's good to see there's a report. And yes, I kind of seem to think that the 150 million is really to do with national infrastructure. Because I was a little bit disappointed in that there wasn't a lot of text about adaptation and those other things that we need to be thinking about alongside this protection. I'd hate to think that flood protection was the only thing that the government was going to do, and that to me seemed to be almost status quo. But I think we do need to make sure as this progresses that we are saying, and that will probably be coming out, I suppose, with our climate report due out later in the year, about what needs to be done to improve our resilience and perhaps relocate rather than just addressing flooding issues that because of inappropriate land use activity or the confinement of a river that needs to expand out a wee bit. And in terms of the matter of Westport, I note on the media the other day that someone came on the TV and basically thought it was a fruitless exercise to ring fence Westport with some embankment wall all the way around and continually to put money into trying to fight nature. And, you know, their view was that we need to effectively start looking at making some hard calls about things. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, especially in Westport, and is that township, what's the township going to do in the future? But I think that will coming. You're talking about 50 to 100 years before we are really going to see some of those measures need to be in place. But we do need to continually express our view that other issues need to be considered along with the flood protection.
Stephanie?
Thank you, Councillor Edge. Indeed, there are multiple issues. This particular one is about the flood infrastructure and our statutory responsibilities as regional councils, the costs of that and the continued implications for our communities. In terms of the wider implications, whether that's about managed retreat or otherwise, that sits in the kete of Minister Shaw at the moment and then the Climate Commission, but also with the RM reforms around the Climate Change Adaptation Act yet to be designed. So I expect that we will have further conversations in the manner that you've just mentioned.
Thanks. And can we just round out this now? John, I see you there, and then Ian will be the last speaker on this, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I just respond to my fellow councillor around community resilience and the thought that we should, through the Climate Committee, be engaging in that role on a community basis. That is very much the prerogative of civil defence and the territorial authorities in putting those processes and actions into play, and as they are further developed. So I think it would be a significant overreach if we as a regional council decided we would want to dip our toe into those waters, which would be counter to the actions and roles that we otherwise support through Civil Defence Group and the TAs.
Thank you, John. Ian, last word.
Yeah, but John said some of the things I was going to say. Stephanie said an awful lot of the things I was going to suggest.
Good.
Just in direct reply to Phil, and he said that it was a more provincial thing than Greater Christchurch because they've already got protection from floods, and other people shouldn't, need to seek resilience other than flood protection. If you talk to people with households, with homes and industrial businesses and areas that are protected by flood protection stop banks, which may not be adequate for the threats of climate change, I can tell you that the resilience they're looking for is protection. It's not for some discussion about how they might shore up their mental resilience. They want physical resilience.
Good, thank you. I'm going to the motion now, so I'll take it, Vicky, that you will move this motion that we receive an update on the climate change work program at Environment Canterbury, and I'll take it, Elizabeth, that you will second that. There's no dissent there, so all those in favour of accepting this report, please say aye. Or receiving this report, say aye.
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 All those against, there are no one against, so that's carried. So thank you very much for that. We're moving to our last item on the agenda, which is on page 40. And am I right this time in assuming, Jesse, that you're going to speak to this?
Kia ora tātou, councillors. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, these are the Greater Christchurch Partnership Committee minutes from the meeting held on the 10th of December. They're the unconfirmed minutes. The partnership has since met on the 11th of February, but due to the timings of the agenda for the GCP meeting on the 11th of February, these minutes hadn't been confirmed in time for our agenda, so that's why they're unconfirmed. I understand Councillor Clearwater may speak to the content substance of that meeting, but largely it focused on some of the key achievements that the partnership has made over the last 18 months. And Councillor Clearwater, I'm happy to speak to that if you'd like, or I'm happy to hand over to you at this point.
Well, thank you, Jesse, and Councillor Edge might like to comment too. And following from what you said, Jesse, I'd assume that in fact we would receive the confirmed minutes from the now confirmed There's a good summary, I think, in our agendas of all of the achievements that the partnership committee have made, and it's really, I think, it was really useful report to actually look at the huge number of achievements, really. And straight away, I have to thank staff like you, Jessie, but all of the staff who work for the partnership too, in terms of what has been achieved. Because just even if we look at, say, the mode shift plan, but we've had the spatial plan, which I referred to too, and we have started on the social and affordable action, housing action plan. So these are huge pieces of work, each one of them. The other comment I would make is that one important part was how, in fact, we've really strengthened our relationships with Ngāi Tahu. That's been a key part of the work that we have done. And I'll just finish by mentioning that it was really special that in the submission to the Parliamentary Select Committee today, to hear Mayor Sam Broughton talk about how, in fact, this was, and he said, a new age of cooperation, and he talked about the benefits from that. So that is something also that I see the partnership doing, and Sam presented that very eloquently today, besides the singing. So, but Councillor Edge might like to comment about that meeting too.
Councillor Edge.
Yes, just quickly, really. It's you know, we get the minutes of the meeting, but a lot of the material that we're looking at is in the briefing sessions, which don't come out to our following meeting. But look, a lot of things are coming out. A lot of work's being done behind the scenes. And on the 23rd of February, we do have a briefing from GCP on the GC 2050 project and where that's at. And quite a bit of work's being done on those other things. But yeah, a lot of work being done in those things in the past, especially the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan work that's getting underway. And we're looking forward to engagement with the ministers later in the year.
Look, thank you, Grant, and thanks, Jess, and also Phil for that. I think that if there's an opportunity in the future to have a more intense discussion about these things, that we should leave it till then, until we have a workshop. So I'm pretty comfortable, unless anyone's got something burning a hole in their pocket on this, I think we'll move to the resolution. So the resolution we have on the screen is that the council receives the unconfirmed minutes of the Greater Christchurch Partnership Committee held on the 10th of December 2021. I'll take it that you've moved that, Phil, and then it's been seconded by Grant.
Happy to move.
Yes, I'll second.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, put your hand up if you need to. So thank you very much again, that's carried. So we're now moving, there are no PX issues because we've dealt with that. So we'll move to item 10, which is the next meeting, and the next meeting of our council is not very far away. In fact, it's the 24th of February 2022. So look forward to that. And I'll move to item 11 and ask Yayan, if it's appropriate, Yayan, to close this out with a karakia.
Oh, hold on. There you go. Kia ora tātou, nei te mihi atu kia koutou katoa, mo tēnei hui, mo te Tumu Taiao ki Waitaha, na mihi ana ki a Jenny Rao ko Pira i te konohi mo te kaunihere nei i te Select Committee ki te Paremata, no reira tēnā kōrua, a koutou katoa i kōrero hia i tēnei rā, tēnā koutou a tēnā tata katoa, kia pai te aihai ki te hiki mai nei, nā reira hei karakia whakakapi, no reira mi no tātou. Kia tau ka minaka taka ka mea karo ki ruka ki tēnā o tātou. Ko mahi atu hua mā kihikihi kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te reo Māori, tuturi whiti, whakamaua kia tīna. Tīna. Aumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Mauri ora.
Kia ora, Yayan. So we'll declare the meeting closed at 2:56, and thank you for your attendance. And for those who are doing the science review, it's 3:15. So we'll see you then.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everyone.